Hey everyone, Adrian here. Welcome back to the Conversations with Adrian podcast. Today I'm joined by Aoun. Lucas, thank you so much for being on the show.
Yeah, Adrian, I'm glad to be here. Looking forward to chatting.
Yeah, me too. I've been watching a bunch of your um, Instagram information you put out, been listening to your podcasts and all that kind of stuff, and I find you're a really fascinating guy. You kind of like tick a lot of the boxes of the things that I like to geek out on. So I geek out on fasting, I geek out on testosterone production, around building muscle, around getting smarter, around retaining information and all that kind of stuff. So I really want to applaud you. And I just finished your little course, your short course, the Limitless program, which was like a shit ton of information. So if anyone wants to get a hold of it, they definitely should. And I want to give you heaps of credit for that. It was a world of information that some of it I just had no idea about. Others was kind of like I was already abreast of, but really, really good content, man.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think you sort of hit on my main message and mission, which is to provide health information that's difficult to find on Google. And the Limitless course was like a representation of that. And yeah, my mission is, really to distill and highlight novel and insightful health tips that can, really provide people the ability to take control of their health. So yeah, really appreciate your feedback there.
Yeah, my pleasure. When you got started with all this, was it based on your own experience in terms of something that happened like to you personally or something? Because you're only a young guy. So, I mean, a lot of
Yeah.
what you talk to is kind of, I don't know if it's just a young guy thing. Because when I was younger, particularly like in the bodybuilding scene and all that kind of stuff. I didn't really, I got into the nutritional side of things, obviously working out, but if you just wanted to get bigger, you just took steroids. So you didn't really have that much else to kind of lean to. And there wasn't a Google. So, like I'm showing my age there, but there wasn't a Google to really research. You kind of had Muscle Mag, that would come out once a month.
Yeah, yeah. No, definitely. I think like the main objective is to showcase from a young age, really. From the age of 17, I was fascinated in ways that I can improve my performance on the soccer field. So I used to play like semi-professional soccer. I represented Melbourne overseas in Hungary and Budapest, and was interested in ways that I could improve my performance. And I started experimenting with different supplements and different protocols. I was working in my dad's pharmacy at the time as well. So I had access to a lot of different compounds and things like that. And I just fell in love with the whole idea of self experimentation and basically hacking our biology in a way that, like, suits us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like it. Was there anything that kind of led you to keep going down this path? Is it something that you just always found a keen interest in, or is there some sort of catalyst to, an event in life or something like that?
Well, I'd say at the start, I mean, I was also suffering from acid reflux or heartburn.
Mm-hmm.
Again, from a very young age. And my dad, being a pharmacist, would always just give me those acid reflux medications. So I was always interested in, like, okay, like, why was I suffering from reflux? Like, what's it from? And I started to dive deeper into the actual mechanism by which how some of these medications worked. And I learned that they were suppressing stomach acid or lowering stomach acid, and that was leading to downstream a whole wide variety of other health issues, such as low iron, low vitamin B12, because I wasn't able to absorb it from the medications. And then I realized, like, there's got to be another way to look at this. There must be like a root cause for the acid reflux. And that's when I transitioned over into studying naturopathy. So I completed a 4-year degree, studied naturopathy, Bachelor of Health Science, um, and that pretty much encapsulated the way that I perceive healing the body and optimizing performance. And then, yeah, I started to just learn more about the basic biological functions, and yeah, I just really love this space.
Mm. Yeah, and you're so good at it too. I like the way that you kind of go through a for and against in terms of some of the things that you recommend to do. Like there was a podcast I was only listening to just the other day with you. I'm not sure if it's one of the most recent ones, but it was kind of you interviewing this guy from overseas, and it was a kind of had a bit of a dark tone to it, in a sense of, some people look to these kind of ways of improving your health, but then there's this old sort of, I think it's a bodybuilding thing where if you go, well, if I can take 1 gram of protein and put on a kilo of weight, what if I took 6 grams of protein? Then I should be like 6 kilos heavier. So it's kind of an interesting thing where you start to sort of double down on the dosages of things, but you don't realize that there could be some serious adverse effects to the things that you're doing, and could be on a very micro level, in terms of supplementation. But then some of these things, when we get in, we'll talk about later, are getting to testosterone building and these sort of nootropics and things like that. And there's also like these buzz terms nowadays with the mushrooms and the, all of this stuff that kind of like really, fires up the brain and things like that. There is a balance to all of that. Yeah. Like, and that's what I like about the things that you talk to. You kind of go, here's the positive side of things, but if the dosage is X, Y, and Z, well, then you could experience this type of thing. So that's what I really appreciate, all the work that you're doing.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, there are pros and cons to any intervention. So, for example, just because it's natural doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be safe and harmless. So it's something that, like you mentioned, with the establishing the correct dosage for your unique biology, like that takes a lot of skill and knowledge to figure that out. And there's a lot of people out there that are using things that they just hear about online, or they hear about on social media, and they sort of go ahead and blindly supplement. But that can actually do more harm than good. And so this is something that I try and like vocalize and make people aware of.
Mm. Do you often just use yourself as like the test dummy before you do anything, or do you using the feedback of your community and all that kind of stuff? How do you go about it?
Well, when I first started Adrian, I mean, I was really the N=1 self-experimenter. So I was subjecting myself to a wide range of different supplements, different protocols, different nootropics, different drugs, things like that, that I was basically interested in learning about how they would affect my biology. So I was, over time, what I was doing was collating a big list of data points and like just relentless experimenting to figure out like how certain things affect me. And what I would do whilst I was experimenting, I would simultaneously look them up online and conduct my research whilst I was experimenting. So I was sort of getting that like hands-on feeling, or the actual, tactile, the feeling sensation of the actual experiment. Plus then I'd go into the research studies, research, for hours on end on different compounds. And then I'd also tap into like underground forums and like online forums that had like, similar guys that were interested in optimizing their body in the same sort of way.
Yeah, got it. What's can you recount a wild experience that you had with any of the little interventions that you come to?
Yeah. I mean, the one that I had the most profound effect from was a supplement that's actually considered a drug in Russia. It's called bromantane.
Mm.
And that particular compound there is known as a synthetic adaptogen. So adaptogens basically refer to any substance or compound that can modulate the body's stress response. And
Yeah.
so I, got my hands on this bromantane. I did a lot of research, obviously, beforehand. I looked at the recommended dosages, and I remember I started out with like, I think it was 1/5 of the recommended dosage, because I was, I was a little bit hesitant. I was also pretty young. I was around 22 years old. And I remember after dosing, I went to the library. I went to the state library here in Melbourne. And 4 hours after dosing, I was like, I don't really feel anything. I'm like, didn't really notice much. And then it wasn't until I left the library that I was like, all right, now I think I'm feeling it. Like I started experiencing like definitely an upbeat mood. And I also felt like I had insane amounts of energy. So then once I got back home, I went to my local playground and I just started doing a workout. Until this day, nothing will beat that workout. Like it was the best workout ever. I literally felt like Superman. And then from there onwards, I was like, all right, this is I'm a little bit nervous now because I'm worried about like a massive come down or like a massive crash,
Mm.
but it never came. So I never experienced the crash or come down.
Wow.
And so I was like pretty blown away that these effects were lasting for like days after I stopped that single dosage. So
Mm.
that's an example of one experiment that went, really well. Then there's
Yeah.
other experiments that I've tried or tested out that have not gone so well, where I've sort of, experienced a little bit more tension or anxiety, social anxiety. So yeah, I think the whole premise of self-experimentation is that you're just basically collecting data points on your biology, because as I'm sure you'd know, like there's a lot of individualization when it comes to different supplements and different compounds.
Mm.
And what might work for me may not work for you. So that's something that I really try to, reinforce.
Yeah. Very good. What's the day in the life of Lucas look like? Now that you're kind of, you strike me as like a Tim Ferris meets Dave Asprey. You're kind of a little blend between those two guys. Does that offend you, or is that a compliment?
No, I was hoping you'd infuse some Andrew Huberman in there as
Yeah,
well.
yeah, okay, no worries. Yeah, of course. I mean, the geekiness in terms of like getting into the nitty gritty of things, 100%. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So a typical day for me is like I spend a lot of time doing research. So like collating research and then putting together like PowerPoints and presentations to create videos for YouTube or podcasts and Instagram. So I create a lot of content. Like I'm smashing out a lot of content, and it's been like that from day one. Like
Mm.
I started my Instagram whilst I was at university. So the second year I was at second year university, um, I would stay back after class because what would happen is during class I'd get so frustrated that everything was moving so slow, and everything was just so slow that I was like, after class I had to like quickly like catch up and just churn out a massive amount of like content or work. Um, so I'd stay back after class for like 3 hours just designing Instagram posts,
Mhm.
and I just like relentlessly like just create tons of content. And my mission and objective at the start was to gain the attention of guys like Tim Ferris, Andrew Huberman, Ben Greenfield, like other health influencers, so that they could see my content. And luckily, that strategy worked out really well, because Ben Greenfield ended up seeing one of my posts, and then he was so impressed that he sent me a DM and he actually gave me his number and he's like, I want you on my podcast.
Yeah,
So
wow.
yeah.
Isn't it amazing how that happens? I mean, we're just talking before we got on air about some of the guests that I've had, and I feel the same way with you, with some of the guests that you've had. But I think it's back to that sort of Tim Ferriss reference. There's something about putting yourself out there to the degree that you are, I guess, in a sense, vulnerable. You're allowing criticism, because, like, let's make no mistake, the world of Instagram and the internet and all that kind of stuff is, full of critics, and everyone kind of rubbishing or poo-pooing your work, and there's a bunch of experts that will come in and kind of correct you whenever they see fit. But I think the flip side of it is that you do put yourself out there to the degree that you kind of earn like social credit. You've kind of got like this sort of street cred in terms of the things that you're doing, and you attract those people that come your way. And so I think that's it's just such a powerful thing when it comes to social media. Social media is almost like it's a friend and a foe at the same time. It's got that sort of real addictive dopamine hit every 5 seconds, but then it's also got this highly leveraged network marketing type of aspect of it, which you can't go to any event and talk to 1,000 people with a quality conversation for each one of them, whereas you can via social media. So it's a fascinating dynamic.
Oh, spot on. I mean, I think even to this day, Adrian, like one thing that I really consistently do is I check my Instagram DMs very frequently, because I associate that space with like success and
Mhm.
like, validation or recognition. So every time I check my DMs, I'm sort of hoping for like the same thing to happen again, because it's now a reinforced behavior, because I got that message from Ben Greenfield, which when I got the message, like I was I broke down in tears. Like, I was that excited. I was so happy because I was really hoping that I'd gain the attention of guys like Ben Greenfield, because I knew that I have something unique to offer. And I've always believed in myself that I have a really good eye at figuring out what people want to hear and what they want to see. So yeah, it's become like a reinforced behavior now.
Yeah. I guess you just got to make sure you don't fall into that trap of just like constantly checking the DMs and checking your fan base and, you know, all those sorts of things. You know, that can kind of be super addictive in terms of getting distracted by the thick of thin things, as like Stephen Covey would say, you know. So and you seem like a really active sort of guy anyway. Like you strike me as the type of guy that would kind of get lost in his work to a large degree, but you kind of, I don't know, you seem like the type of person that would just want to, that throughput, that kind of pushing through different elements of work and creating new courses and, you know, reaching out to more people and being sort of like first at the plate. Does that strike you as do you resonate with that in terms of like just wanting to release information that is like cutting edge?
I think you're spot on there, Adrian. I mean, you figured me out straight away. I mean, I'm someone who's very, I would say, very impatient. I think that's definitely a trait of mine, but also, I feel like I move at a very fast pace. Like I crush tasks. I get them done as like ridiculously fast. Even during university, like one of my friends used to joke about this, and he used to say like, "Oh, Lucas has finished the assignment even before the teachers handed out the assignment." And he's already started marking his own assignment, sort of thing. So I used to be like, I don't know if I got that from my mum. She's very like fast and she gets things done really quickly. But I've always just like loved the feeling of getting the stuff you need to do done straight away, really, really fast. And then you can sort of like put your feet up and be like looking at everyone else below you, being like stressing out, sort of thing. Like I used to just love that feeling of like rising to the top. But yeah, definitely, I've definitely found myself getting lost in my work as well. And that obviously comes at a cost as well, because, you know, I'm so heavily immersed in my work that I'm almost antisocial, and I'm in like, you know, my man cave. And there was even a time when my older brother used to say like, he's like, "Oh, bro, you know, you need to go out. You need to go out on the weekends. Like, go out on Friday night, go out on Saturday night, like socialize and meet people." He's like, "You're not going to know what to talk about with people other than, you know, nootropics or testosterone."
Yeah, that's it.
It's the only thing I'll be able to talk about.
It's the one-dimensional guy. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Like, as long as we're talking about nootropics, you know, we'll set Lucas off and he's fine. But any sort of dumbed down conversation about the weather, it's like you're checked out.
Exactly.
Yeah. But you know what? It can be a detriment, but I don't think it's necessarily that bad a thing. Only to the degree that if you find yourself that you're completely disconnected from having any kind of meaningful relationship with anyone else outside of your work, and I think that that's probably where you've gone over the edge. But I do think that I find with like my friends and associates and things like that, there's a key group of people which I like to hang out with. And I've kind of got this reminder on my phone, like once a week, it just says, organize a catch up with a mate. And so because you can kind of get to the point where you just lose yourself through your work and your vocation to the degree that you haven't seen even your best mates like in months, you know. So but what I like to do is kind of look at that reminder and then reach out to people that I know that it's going to be a beneficial interaction. So yeah, there are certain people that you want to keep at arm's length. They could be friends, they could be family, and you're like, you know, they're my mates or they're my family. I tolerate them to that degree. But then there are others where you're like, you know what, I really enjoy their company. I don't want to be a leech and just sort of mooch off them all the time. But at the same time, if I'm going to have an interaction with someone, I want it to be mutually beneficial. And I don't really want to talk about the weather or fucking politics or, you know, anything like that. I want to talk about interesting things. And so I think to that degree, there's probably a benefit in a sense. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think you're spot on there. I think one part to that would be like what I've recently started doing is like from Friday 2 o'clock onwards, like that's when if I don't like block that out, then I'll just keep working. So I just have
Mhm.
to like specifically like push that as like the block off period. And then from 2 o'clock onwards on a Friday, I don't really I get out of the, get out of the house, do things, go to markets, go away on day trips, things like that. And that really does help to it forces me out of that state because the thing is I can get so like heavily, deeply like focused and zoned in. And I always used to find it interesting how people would say, like, how do you work for so long? Or how do you focus on something for so long? And I would say that like it just feels a little bit, it just feels effortless for me, like to do those sort of things. And it's also because I can see true meaning and value behind the work that I'm creating and I'm doing. And it's always like this, I feel like there's like a flame that I have in my inside me that's just like it's if I don't contribute, like if I don't generate or produce or be productive, then I feel like I've like sort of wasted time.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can so relate to that. You feel like I've got heaps of time in life when you think about quantifying the years that you have left if you maintain good health and all those sorts of things. But at the same time, you've got this window of opportunity that you want to make the most of and maximize at all costs. So, and I think um, based on what you just said, like you strike me as a guy that wants to leave the world a better place than what you found it. You kind of want to have a lasting impression. You want to be remembered by people, and you want to have some sort of imprint on like the world's DNA in some way, shape, or form. Would that be true?
That is exactly true. I mean, one thing that I'm really passionate about is having a really strong form of legacy. And for me, that's like I'm hoping that in the next 3 to 5 years, I will have discovered something phenomenal or something huge that millions of people can benefit from. Like, although some people would say, like, your content's already doing that and you're already doing a great job at like, sharing novel health information, I really can see myself discovering something that I don't know if it's going to be like a brand new ingredient or a brand new supplement or a brand new, I don't know, biological pathway. I don't know what it's going to be, but I just can't wait for the day where, I discover that one big thing that
Mm.
will be like game changing in the health space.
Yeah. Sweet. With when it comes to health and things like that, so I'm trying not to make this a coaching session just for me because there's so many questions that I want to ask, like just specifically for what I want. But I know that there's a bunch of my audience who are men. There's like I've got like 45% of my audience base are men, and they're between 35 and 55. So what I've been really encouraging through my coaching, so a lot of the things that I do in a coaching space is probably a term that's kind of like pushed a fair bit in terms of a holistic approach in improving your life and your lifestyle and your well-being. So I look at mental health, I look at physical and emotional health, I look at how you think, how you feel, how you act. I look at values and beliefs and how congruent you are with projecting that version of yourself through life. And I look at all those sorts of things in terms of particularly emotions, because a lot of people are kind of holding on to trapped emotions and past traumas and things like that. So I pull that all together through my coaching. But one of the things that I do touch on, particularly with men, is, and I ask them questions like, for example, do you get up in the morning and do you have a boner in the morning? Do you have morning wood? And if you do, like, how many times can you recall that that's happening? Are you feeling like you've got sort of like a zest for life or some vigor? Do you go to the gym? And if you do you train heavy? How do you feel through that workout? Are you having sex? Like, and I do this for men and women in terms of how many times are you making love? And what is your intensity, your anything to do with orgasms, anything to do with being able to last longer? All those sorts of things are important sort of biomarkers, in my opinion, because it's almost like a little interlude into how much vitality you have in life. And if you don't, then it just illuminates the holes in your armor, which we can kind of look to ways of filling those voids, so to speak, to make your life more whole and complete. Does that make sense? So with respect to your types of coaching, what are the key things that men come back to you in terms of asking questions, or maybe just something that maybe you've discovered, like maybe 3 or 4 or 5 elements that are missing in a man's life to make him more stronger, to make him more mentally alert, to make him more in charge, more in control, feeling more masculine, feeling more like, dominant, feeling more that he's like attacking the world and his job and his career and his business and all those sorts of things.
Yeah, so I'd say definitely the big areas that a lot of men are complaining about these days are, like you mentioned, lack of energy, lack of vitality, poor recovery, and low libido or low sex drive. Like, these are the main areas that most men are complaining of these days. And so if we strip it all the way back, there's a few things that we can do to really unpack and take a very strategic diagnostic approach to this. The first way would be for a man to get a comprehensive set of blood tests complete. Now, when I talk to a number of men these days, a lot of them are saying that that the last time they've had a blood test would have been like 2-3 years ago. And if you're a guy looking to achieve peak performance and you really care about maintaining very high levels of energy, then getting a blood test at least twice a year is absolutely crucial to detect and determine any vitamin deficiencies, mineral deficiencies, and even hormonal deficiencies. And the one hormone that really does play a massive role in enabling a man to feel like a man is testosterone. And when testosterone levels are not at the top end of the reference range, and I mean around 700 to 1,000 nanograms per deciliter, then it's going to be really difficult for a man to feel like he can cope effortlessly in today's society, because testosterone is so crucial for building resilience, increasing confidence, increasing willpower, and also creating that desire to attack and chase after your goals. So I'd say definitely starting with routine blood work, getting that done at least twice a year. That's going to be a huge, pivotal driver of their, energy levels.
Mm. And the thing is, when you go for a blood test and you ask your doctor to test my testosterone levels, they won't do it. They will say you don't need it, or we don't do that, or it's an extra cost or anything like that. So you got to really know what you're testing for, right?
Oh, that's a really critical point that you bring up, Adrian, is around the difficulty, particularly in Australia, for a guy, let's say, goes to his doctor and says he's feeling fatigued and low mood. Most doctors will tend to prescribe an antidepressant, which in that case, we're completely overriding fundamental biology, which is at the root cause. What if that guy had low testosterone and now he's being prescribed an SSRI or an antidepressant, when really that low testosterone was one of the major reasons why he was feeling fatigued and lacking motivation and lacking energy. So it can be really challenging for Aussies to get blood work from their local doctor. But fortunately, there are now services where, guys like yourself or guys listening in, if they want to get blood tests done without the need to go to a doctor, there are services like iMedical and iScreen that enable this to be possible for men who don't want to have a headache trying to get it from their doctor.
Just an aside, in the last couple of years, and it's probably more because I've been focusing a lot on my own personal development in terms of muscle growth, trying to get rid of the dad bod and all that kind of stuff and get back to an optimal health and peak performance. there seems to be an ever increasing observation and evidence that I've never heard more in my life of men suffering from erectile dysfunction, from like bitch tits. Like back in the day, we used to call them bitch tits or man boobs, you know, all that kind of stuff. But you see kids and teenagers and other men, like they're just growing, like yeah, their boobs and their waistlines and all that kind of stuff are growing at an exorbitant rate. And so it just seems to me like there is some sort of a thing going on that is attacking the masculinity or the testosterone levels of men in particular. So with women, what I see is bigger bums, massive boobs. Like I see more like growth in women, but in men, I see the same, but it looks horrible. You know, like you just got bigger boobs and bigger waistlines and bigger bums. You know, but it looks fucking terrible. So
Yeah.
do you agree with that? Is there something going on in terms of toxicities and water and food and all that kind of stuff, which is basically attacking men?
So men are becoming more feminized. Like they're becoming the thing is there's a lot of things in our environment, such as like exposure to plastic, and they're known as like xenoestrogens that are actually having a feminizing effect on men. So they're basically acting as a really strong form of estrogen in the body. And what they're doing is they're actually blocking these testosterone receptors or the androgen receptors, and it's making them carry more body fat. It's causing things like gynecomastia or man boobs. And the reality is that men today, on average, have much lower levels of testosterone than our grandfathers would have. So we're seeing a massive decline in testosterone production in men these days, in addition to massively declining fertility rates as well. So like sperm count, sperm motility, sperm viability, all of that's dropping significantly. And there are many factors that are contributing to this. And that's like things like I mentioned, the xenoestrogens, obesity, carrying extra body fat, insufficient physical activity or weight training, and also just poor diet. So like the dietary choices that we're, leaning towards these days, just, really not conducive to testosterone production.
Mm. Yeah, there's a doco that I watched not too long ago, and it was basically saying that there was some things that are in the water. There's some things like that, those plastics and things that you mentioned, even our colognes and things that we're putting on our skin on a regular basis, lowering our testosterone levels. But one of the things that was really astonishing to me was that it's almost like they keep lowering the level of what's called what would be a normal testosterone level, to the point that in today's day and age, or say 30 or 40 years ago, today's testosterone levels would have made a male sterile. Like they would have been, that's how they would have registered. Does that make sense? So and they're sort of saying that maybe in the future, there's in the not too distant future, I think the year that's been mentioned a bunch of times is like 2045 or 2035, that it'll almost be zero. Testosterone levels will be zero in most men, which is just nuts.
Yeah, there's a statistic. I think it's like in 35 years from now, all men in the Western world will be infertile, which is insane. And it pretty much makes sense as to why, men are looking for solutions. Like they're looking for ways to overcome the challenges that we're faced with in society with, these pollutants, these chemicals that are having this feminizing effect on our bodies. And one solution that some men go down is literally to take testosterone. So literally to use testosterone replacement therapy or testosterone injections. But the thing is, with going down that path, once a guy decides to go on testosterone replacement therapy, he's pretty much committing to that for life. And that's because when you go on testosterone replacement therapy, it's an exogenous hormone. That means it down regulates and shuts down your body's own production of that hormone. So I sort of sit in the space where like men don't want to go on TRT, they don't want to go on testosterone replacement therapy, but they're willing and open to do lifestyle interventions such as diet, exercise, supplementation, and other biohacks to really maximize their testosterone. And that's pretty much the space that I occupy, which is like, how can we restore levels naturally without jumping on testosterone replacement therapy?
Mm. Well, there'll be levels to that, right? How old are you, Lucas?
I'm 27.
Yeah, wow. So I'm 45, right? And this is not a flex at all, but I am doing things now at 45 that are similar to what I was doing when I was 20. So and that is going for like weights in the gym. I started MMA a few months ago with my kids and things like that. So I'm not saying that I'm great at it. I'm just saying that I am lasting for example, when we do sparring and certain things, we might do 5 rounds of 3 minutes, or sometimes we might do 5 rounds of 5 minutes, which is exhausting work, right? And my face is as red as a tomato. But the thing is, I'm sparring people that are your age or younger, or a little bit older. So I kind of really relish in the fact that I have been able to kind of reverse the aging process, or at least get a part of my stamina and my endurance and all those sorts of things back to a level that I was when I was 20. I'm not happy with my body fat levels. I think there's things that I can be doing that could increase those things. And my worst part is my lower back. It gives me the shits. Like I can have a skin fold of like 3 or 4 in my biceps, but it's like 50 on my back, which gives me the shits. So but the reason why I say that is because I think that there are levels to what you were speaking about. So someone who's 27 like you, who may not be in the best shape, but may want to increase their testosterone levels, there's heaps of things. And we all should be doing stuff to do with weights and food and those sorts of things. And there's other little stuff which I want you to go into. But then there's probably another level after that, because at my stage in life, like I've got 3 kids, I don't intend on having any more. I'm pretty much done with all of those sorts of things. I don't mind going down that route of perhaps not hormone replacement in terms of taking testosterone, but maybe something like SARMs or those sorts of things. I think I would be interested in testing all of that. So with that being said, can you just give me a rundown of some things that I can be doing, or any male can be doing, that is going to increase their testosterone levels, to do with exercise, to do with diet, and to do with supplementations? But I want you to keep in mind that I don't want to have, which I already do, I've got a cupboard full of fucking supplements. Like it's got, I reckon there'd be at least 80 bottles of something in there. It's bullshit, right? But I don't want to take them all. So I take them as I get inspiration, but then I'm like, I'm not taking all these. If I have to take them, I'm going to fucking rattle everywhere I go. I'm just going to. So can you give me almost like the brass tacks of what I need in order to increase testosterone, increase muscle, lean body mass, maybe cognitive function, maybe even something to do with I don't know, flexibility, like just how I take on the world, how I see things, and just give me that sort of vigor and vitality, that energy that I want to kind of have that control back in my life.
Yeah. So I want to actually start this out by looking at from a top-down approach. So looking at a lot of the interventions, such as the dietary interventions, the supplementation protocols, the exercise training modalities, and different types of weight training, the objective is to structure these workouts and structure your nutrition in a way that promotes the production of testosterone through up regulating the enzymes that convert cholesterol into pregnenolone and then downstream into testosterone. So starting out from a dietary approach, first and foremost, perhaps the most important factor is to get sufficient amounts of healthy fats. So I mean things like olive oil, avocados, macadamias, coconut oil, ghee, butter, saturated fat from red meat. There's no need to fear red meat. So these are like the predominant fat sources that are really highly correlated to high levels of testosterone. And then from a carbohydrate perspective, it depends on the guy, but most men should get around 100 to 150 grams of carbohydrates per day. And this is, hoping that they're doing some degree of like physical weight training, things like that. And the carbohydrate sources there, I mean, that can range from, fresh fruit like blueberries, blackberries, raspberries, papaya, different types of fruit, or perhaps it could be, good quality sourdough bread, and then even utilize things like white rice, which is easy to digest. So they're like great from a carbohydrate perspective, and then the proteins. This is something that's going to be somewhat controversial, but that is like the vegan diet. Unfortunately, the vegan diet is not the best diet for testosterone optimization, and that is because a vegan diet lacks these animal-based foods like steak and meat and chicken and fish and things like that. And a lot of these foods actually contain, highly bioavailable nutrients that the body can very easily break down and utilize. So definitely that should be like the focus from like a, macronutrient breakdown. And then if we look at things like exercise, so definitely the most important factor from an exercise standpoint is for men to engage in high intensity, low duration or short duration activities. So that can be either doing sprint work, going to a spin class, doing some form of like weight training in the 8 to 12 rep or 5 to 10 rep range. And they're like the main factors there that can really, significantly move the needle in terms of boosting testosterone naturally.
Mm-hmm. And what about the supplements and things like that?
Yeah. So as it
What's really
pertains
moving the needle these days, like in terms of some of the things that you've been coaching on?
Well, actually, what's been helping a lot has been icing the testes. I don't know if you've seen my content around that.
Yeah, I've started it.
I've had, yeah, I've had a number of guys who started out around like 600, 700 as their natural testosterone, their score on their blood test. And after like 8 to 12 weeks of just icing for like 10 to 15 minutes per day, some guys have noted like 100 to 150 point increase in testosterone just from icing, which is like, it's definitely a noticeable, like you will notice that. And, a number of guys report improvements in energy, motivation, and focus following icing.
Yeah, wow. And can you do it at any age or not? Is there a limit to like, does it affect you if you're younger, or it's no good if you're, like those sorts of things, or is it better if you're older? What are your thoughts on that?
I'd say, any guy between 18 to 65 really can benefit from icing. I mean, I've known guys that are like in their, early 60s that are doing it regularly, and that they're noticing benefits. So yeah, it's definitely a big winner.
And just explain what happens when you ice your balls. What makes the effect on testosterone?
Yeah. So the whole practice, first of all, is we're applying the ice not up against not up against the skin. We want to use like up against the underwear or the jocks so that you don't burn your skin. So basically, you're looking at doing that for about 10 to 15 minutes per day. And what it does is it causes a massive amount of vasoconstriction. So it constricts the blood vessels in the testes. And this is followed by like a rebound vasodilation. And basically think of it as like bringing new, fresh oxygen and nutrients to the testes, better blood flow. And that's creating that a rebound effect, switching on the Leydig cells and increasing testosterone output. So this effect can be noticed. Like a number of guys report increased morning wood even after like the first day of icing. So definitely a big winner.
Mm. All right, let's go into some supplements before I let you go. So I'm really keen on, like I said to you before, on experimenting with a couple of different things. So supplementation is definitely one of them. I think I tick a lot of the boxes in terms of exercise and nutrition, but I definitely want to go to that next level. So heading into, again, now into my late 40s, like I'm 45 now. So I'm thinking the next 5-10 years, I really want to make sure that I'm hitting a couple of key markers. But in terms of supplementation, I've made up my mind that I'm going to need some help. So what would you recommend?
So first of all, given your age, I think the one supplement that will really move the needle is micronized pregnenolone, which is a precursor hormone. It's like the mother of all steroid hormones. So it's like pregnenolone is what cholesterol, when you consume cholesterol, it gets converted down into pregnenolone, and you can supplement with pregnenolone. It's a little bit difficult in Australia to get your hands on due to the stupid rules and regulations here.
Mhm.
Like it's just ridiculous. It's not. It's a very safe compound. Um, Pregnenolone between 5 to 10 milligrams sublingually, so under the tongue. That can do a pretty good job at raising your baseline level of total testosterone. So definitely consider looking into pregnenolone. The next one would be Tonkat Ali. You've probably seen Dr. Andrew Huberman talk about the benefits of Tonkat Ali, but that's like Malaysian ginseng. And that one there definitely has a noticeable effect, even as early as 3 to 5 days after starting usage. So Tonkat Ali at a dosage of around 200 milligrams can do a really great job at supporting testosterone production. And then the third herb that I really like is Fedosia agrestis. So Fedosia, I literally just had some before this podcast. Fedosia agrestis, looking at a 20-to-1 extract, and we're using around 400 milligrams. That one there helps to increase the signal from the brain to the testes to create more testosterone. And that's traditionally used in Nigeria and African parts of the world where they're looking at increasing libido, and it also acts as a potent aphrodisiac as well.
Mm. So would you stack all of these together?
Yeah, so you can combine all three. Like this is just like a general, baseline testosterone boosting stack, and they work really well synergistically. You will notice an effect, within a week or so.
Mm. So is there any other things that you would recommend? So anyone who's listening at the moment is probably going to want to find out more about. So I'll link up everything that you've got, because I know you've got a bunch of supplements and you've got a few things. And I want to also make note that you go into so much more detail through your courses. I mean, like this is just really scratching the surface. And if people want to really find out what's available at their fingertips, I mean, they should just definitely go and learn from you. So is there any other things that you think that people should know that would really make a significant difference in just how they kind of view the world, how they wake up in the morning, how they view life, attack life, feel more optimistic, feel more like they've got a bit more vitality to take on the day?
So my biggest takeaway or piece of health advice that I can give to your listeners would be to build a level of self-awareness. You've probably had a few other guests that might have said the same thing in the past, but like developing a level of self-awareness is absolutely essential, because if we're talking about all these different biohacks and strategies and supplements, the most important thing is, how is it affecting your physiology? How is it affecting how you feel? Because there's no point in me talking about the different strategies and protocols that I personally use. It's up to how it actually affects your unique biology. So the biggest way to quickly understand how things affect you is by building a really solid foundational level of self-awareness. And from that level of, high level of self-awareness, then you can quickly and easily manipulate these interventions and find out what's working best for you. So definitely building a level of self-awareness is crucial.
Mm. Well, what would be the markers or something that would indicate to someone listening that they really should need to look into doing some sort of supplementation or changing their lifestyle or their eating habits? So there's sort of things that would come to mind in terms of something that they would be experiencing on a regular basis that they may have sort of swept under the rug as this is just how I am?
So in terms of markers, like I'd be looking at, definitely like vitamin B12, iron, testosterone levels, zinc levels. Like there's a range of different blood tests that are really crucial for men to, really consider exploring, because any sort of deficiency in any of these things that I've spoken about will have a pretty dramatic effect on how they think, feel, and perform. So any sort of deficiency or even toxicity, let's say they're already taking supplements, which I'm sure some of your audience is probably already taking a bunch of supplements. If they're taking these supplements blindly and not really knowing what to do, they don't have the proper guidance, they could actually be doing more harm than good. They could be building up toxicity in like vitamin B6, which, can happen after 4 weeks of supplementation. So I think, really understanding that aspect is, really pivotal.
What about some other feedback that they would be getting just from their body, just from how they think, how they feel, and something that could be more like internal mechanism, something going on, or maybe a physical attribute or something like that?
I would say one marker would be like if they're feeling absolutely drained and exhausted after a hard workout, like the following day. So like if they're waking up feeling like there's no possible way they could do, another workout, then that's going to indicate that there's probably some issues with recovery. So definitely considering that. Another thing that's also pretty common, particularly amongst men, is the a pale conjunctiva. So like when you pull your eye like the eyelid down there, if it's pale, that can actually indicate that there's low iron and that they're suffering from like borderline anemia or low iron. So that's even another way that men can sort of do like an at-home sort of diagnostic test to assess their day-to-day energy levels.
Yeah, brilliant. What's on the horizon for you, Lucas? What's besides your discovery of something amazing in the next 2 to 5 years? You're giving yourself a timeline to achieve that little goal. What's on the horizon for you?
For me, just to continue delivering exceptional, high quality content, and just to really expand my YouTube channel. So, like my goal with YouTube is I want to hit 1 million subscribers one day. That would mean a lot to me. Means that I'm impacting, tons more people around the world. So really focusing in on, developing the YouTube channel and just, driving as much traffic to there as possible.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. All right, mate. Well, I'll be sure to link up all of your websites and social links and all that kind of stuff in the show notes. But I want to thank you for, once again, all your information. I really found it fascinating. I'm glad that we've got an Aussie guy who's flying the flag for the biohackers of the world, which is really good. And I just think you're a down-to-earth, all-round great guy. So I appreciate everything you do. Thanks for your time today. And hopefully we can circle back soon and take on a few more issues that are going on with men's health. So appreciate your time.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Adrian. It was a pleasure chatting.
My pleasure. Talk to you soon, mate.
Awesome.